Hey there guys, it's DMO73 bringing you the first deck profile of the week. This is the Abdul Demon Aggro kind of deck that I designed, focusing around, so obviously the ruler is Ebony Prophet. He's a J-activate of pay 1 dark. You can do that only if you control Grubalesta, the Sealing Stone, otherwise you have to pay 2 dark and 1 colorless. And then you can also tap him to give something -300, -300 until the end of the turn. That's a pretty interesting little trick that he can do. And then he flips over into Abdul Alhazred, the Harbinger of Despair. Continuous effect of the fact that abilities, enter abilities of your opponent's cards don't trigger, which is really powerful. And then for a pay 0 cost, you can make something lose all of its abilities until the end of the turn, either a Resonator or an Addition, and you can do that twice per turn. Thing to keep in mind, that once something is already on the chase, Abdul can't successfully negate it. He doesn't negate things, he just removes them. So if they're already on the chase, or if they're activated in response to his effect, those are still going to go through, but you can turn off an Addition's buff for the turn, or something like that. That's something that you can do, but mainly just turning off the enter effects is his big deal. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about using his ability against your own creatures a little bit later. So the stone lineup, it's a black-red. So we run 4 Scorched Bales, so that we have access to black and red. We run, obviously, a Grubalesta, the Sealing Stone, because we want to be able to turn on Abdul faster. We run a Little Red, the Pure Stone, just to be able to get extra burn damage in there, as well as being able to call between black and red based on what you need more of. And then we played 2 basic black and 2 basic red mana, just so we have a good switch. So as I indicated in the video, I accidentally missleeved these because I was thinking about making the deck a little differently. So they were black-greens, but this is how it actually needs to be. It's 2 blacks and 2 reds. So let's go ahead and go into the monster lineup. It's not your traditional aggro in the sense that it's going to throw out a lot of monsters really quick. It's mainly due to the fact that the monsters you are going to put out are going to come out faster than they should, more than they should, and be way more powerful than they should at that point. So we have the 4 Ebony Devil. This is a 1-drop 500/500 who at the end of each of your turns you take 200 damage. Abdul turns that off. So if you flip over Abdul, you're not going to be able to, and you use one of the abilities on it, you're not going to be able to, not going to take that 200 damage. So this becomes a 1-drop 5/5, which is insanely good, but also just in the beginning of the game, 200 damage here and there is not a big deal, especially since we're only running 2 colors and not too worried about burn. Then we have Neithardt, the Demon Knight. This is a 2-drop 500 that makes it so that he cannot be targeted by light spells or light cards and abilities, and anything that any kind of light cards that swing at him, he prevents the damage. So he can kind of be like your anti-light card, but mainly it's just because he's a body, a 500/500, and he's another search target for the really powerful card Summoning Circle, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Then Forty Thieves. This is to kind of fuel the kind of bigger creatures that you're hoping to see later, with a specific play that we'll talk about in a little bit, as well as to be able to maybe draw into your Necronomicons, or just stuff that you need faster, while still, because of Abdul and his abilities with Necronomicon in play as well, discarding is not a big deal because we'll be able to draw those back later. And then 3-0 the Magus of Null is kind of your countering, board wiping kind of ability. Quick cast, you can cast it during your opponent's turn, 700/500, that's really powerful. And when it enters, everything gets -200, -200 on your opponent's side of the board and loses all these sense of flying. So you can kind of prevent big plays that your opponent might make by using 0. And of course, any demon deck isn't complete without 4 Mephistopheles, the Abyssal Tyrant. One of the most powerful Resonators in the game right now. It's got flying, it's got target attack, strong enough to kill any ruler. It becomes targeted by your opponent's card effects. They take 500 damage. And then at the end of each of your turns, you actually have to banish another Resonator you control. So if you control 2 and they're the only 2 you control, they'll eat each other. But if you only control 1, you have nothing else to banish, so he'll stay on board, which is great. But then with Abdul, you can just turn off that ability. So like attack with it, so he still gets flying and target attack and everything. Then use Abdul on him during your turn to turn off the having to banish something at the end of the turn. And you can keep your board presence without any of the drawbacks of Mephistopheles. And then the last 2 cards is just kind of a finisher, is Blazer, Eater of Dimensions. just to be able to, with Necronomicon in play and other kind of stuff, you'll be able to play this card from anywhere, essentially. It'll almost never be dead once it hits your hand. So, really, really powerful card, and just to be able to kind of quickly get that last little bit of damage in is really, really powerful, especially with the better stone lineup now. Moving on to the spells, we try and do a lot of quick, like, finishing burns. We run 4 Thunder. You saw the play with Necronomicon to get the Thunder in the grave. It's a really powerful combo. Then 4 Flames of Outer World, which can deal 800 damage to target J/Resonator, and it's unchaseable, so you can't counter it, which is just free guaranteed removal on the board, as well as it takes out some pretty important rulers that sometimes this deck can have a problem with, like Kayn, as you saw in the match. And then Summoning Circle of Alhazred. Oh, just 3 of those, sorry. 3 Summoning Circle of Alhazred. You search your main deck for a Demon Resonator, and then if you're put it in your hand, shuffle your main deck. But if your J ruler is Abdul or Ebony Prophet, you can then summon any number of copies of that same card from your hand for 2 less dark. Essentially, if you have a bunch of a demon in your hand, you can play this card and then play all the copies of that demon at a reduced cost. So if the cost is only 2, you can play a huge amount of creatures on board really, really fast, as you saw. So if you have a really loaded hand, it's almost a good idea in your mulligan to keep a couple of them, especially if you have this, so then you can turn 2 and quickly throw out a bard that your opponent just has no idea what to deal with, and then just continue to put continual pressure on them. And then for some control kind of elements, just Spiral of Despair to try and disrupt your opponent's plays. Once you've got creatures on board, while you're waiting to draw into your like heavier creatures, you can disrupt your opponent's plays even more by just causing Spiral of Despair to make them discard 2 cards. Powerful card here is Necronomicon. This is a great spell that lets you play things in your graveyard. It's been errated, so it doesn't say as if it was in your hand anymore, so enter effects won't trigger. But with cards like Mephistopheles, Blazer, Spiral of Despair, all that kind of stuff, Bloody Moon, shenanigans, all kinds of things, this becomes a really powerful card. You then have to just, if a card would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, you banish it, and remove from the game instead, and at the end of the turn, you discard all your cards. But with Abdul, at the end of the turn, you can turn it off. So anything you wouldn't have to discard, if something's going to be sent to the graveyard that you don't want it to be sent to during your opponent's turn, you can turn it off, making it so things are going to be able to go where they need to go. So Abdul can play around with Necronomicon a lot, really minimizing a lot of the drawbacks of it. Then, because of the whole graveyard recursion and some pretty sick things you can do with it, it's Akashic Records of Eternal Flame. This lets you pay 2 less colorless cost to play something that has the same name in your graveyard. With Necronomicon, that becomes really easy because you can play cards, you can play something cheaper from your hand, something cheaper from your graveyard. Like, you can do a lot of different kinds of things with this, as well as some unique, interesting control-y elements with this card, Bloody Moon. If you have, and with Forty Thieves, with discarding stuff to kind of fuel you being able to play things for cheaper. And so Bloody Moon is really interesting because if you play one on turn 3, or one's in the graveyard already, and you have Akashic Records up, you only pay 1 red to do this. So then if you have Necronomicon on board as well, you can essentially do several Bloody Moons almost every turn against your opponent. And if they're playing a special stone magic deck, you can literally make it so they just don't have mana for the game. And at that point, if your opponent has 10 special magic stones and you've destroyed all of them, and there's no way for them to recur, you win because your opponent can't spend any resources. So you're just gonna have to take it. So that's it for the deck profile, guys. I hope you like it. I think it's a pretty unique, interesting idea. It's definitely different than your traditional kind of aggro thing that you would think about. But it's really fun, and I really like Abdul as a ruler. So seeing him in a more aggressive deck as opposed to a control deck was pretty fun to do. Check out the other feature match next week, as well as the other deck profile later today. And like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you thought of the deck. And until next time, guys, this is TMO73 signing off.